Hey everyone, Scott Hansen here from NFL Red Zone. I hope you're checking out 1 hour of 5 Yard Rush, one of the best podcasts on NFL football in the UK.
What's happening, Rush Nation? It is Waiver Wire day. Sorry, this is a little late going out. It's a lot of things going on, so apologies. It's taking a bit of time to get out. But anyways, let's get straight into it and let's make the most of our Waiver Wire picks this week. I'll start at the quarterback position. It's pretty much a dead end at the quarterback position so far at the moment. If you're looking for Waiver Wire pickups that are available in most leagues, the only person I can really sort of recommend, I don't even want to say with too much confidence at the moment, under 50% owned, is Jordan Love. Jordan Love is currently 47.6% owned in ESPN leagues. So he's someone that you can definitely pick up in most leagues. He's someone that if you're in need of help with bye weeks coming up in week 5, jump ahead of it. Jordan Love is probably the best waiver wire ad out there. If you're really desperate, he's gone. CJ Stroud is probably the only other person I could recommend. He's free in the 11.3% of the leagues. These two are the only two quarterbacks under 50% owned that have scored over 52 fantasy points so far this season. I just think it's a barren wasteland out there. A lot of these quarterbacks are very much of a muchness. For the most part, those two are the only two that seem to be putting up slightly more consistent points with the amount that they're doing. So those two are the options. Wouldn't spend a lot of fab on them. Definitely no more than 1-2% of fab on your quarterbacks if you do need to pick some up. And it's good to do it this week in advance of next week with week 5 if people are in need of a quarterback then. Moving on to running back options. Devon A-Chan, as we're now supposed to call him, is the obvious waiver wire ad this week. I think he's going to bring a lot of fab his way. You got to look at this. He was the RB85 coming into this week. He'd scored less than 1 fantasy point on the season. He was a healthy scratch week 1. Week 2, less than 1 fantasy point. Then we have this 4-touchdown, huge blowout game from A-Chan. A lot of that was due to the fact that most did also exit the game because the game was well and truly won. I'm not saying A-Chan had a role before that and was scoring touchdowns and there was clear usage. I'm not saying don't pick him up. Definitely do pick him up, and if you can, but don't break the bank for him. I'm not 100% convinced he is going to be the sole winner of that role coming out. He might be, but to bet your season on it and bet all your fab on it, I'm just not convinced. I think if I'm being honest, I think pushing in any more than 25% of fab is a huge risk. Even if you need players at the position, he's not someone that I would be willing to bet my fantasy season on. It's not like a Jerome Ford situation. I think there are going to be better situations that are going to come out in the coming weeks where you'll benefit and profit much better than you will this week from A-Chan. So that's just my one sort of caveat there. Just go in on him. Definitely put a fab bid on. Don't put more than 25% fab on him because I think there is a risk that he could be stuck behind Mostert, and then also on top of that, we still have Jeff Wilson to come in and really convolute things. So I just think be a little bit careful on your fab bid. Definitely worth 20-25%. Wouldn't go over that. Roschon Johnson, I talk about him every week. His ownership is going up, so people are listening. 33.4% owned. I still think he's going to be the guy. Last time out, obviously, wasn't great. Last 2 performances haven't been great, but he's still averaging 10 fantasy points a season. So I still think he's well worth an ad and well worth targeting in leagues. Again, I think you can get him pretty cheap because of that fact. So I think you can grab him for sort of 5% of fab, maybe even a bit less than that. So I'm definitely keen on that. We've talked about A-Chan, we've talked about Roschon Johnson. In terms of the running back position, really now you're sort of just chasing these sort of handcuffs and sort of hoping an injury not hoping, that's the wrong word, and seeing if an injury comes your way. With Alvin Kamara coming back, Tony Jones, I don't think is relevant anymore. Devonta Foreman, healthy scratch, second week in a row. He's not relevant anymore. We did see Clyde Edwards-Helaire take a bit of a role with Pacheco injured, but he's not one I really want to touch too much. So really, I'd be looking at trying to get ahead of the curve here, and I'll talk about more of this on Thursday's show. So I'm thinking about running backs that I want to own. So Tucker, Chuba Hubbard to a degree. I'm not too excited about that, but it's one I'd be thinking about. Dowdle of Dallas would be one I'd be interested in. Elijah Mitchell, Zach Charbonnet. These are players that aren't doing anything really right now, but players who, if the lead back goes down, is worth owning. So these are players I would be thinking about targeting. Justice Hill, who was a healthy scratch. Oh, no, sorry, who was injured the weekend, didn't play. He's only 30.7% owned. He's another player I'd be looking to add as well on the waiver wire, probably going under radars because of the fact that he didn't play this week. So, yeah, if you're looking for someone to plug and play immediately, Hill, Achan, but just be careful of the fab on Achan. Maybe Rashawn Johnson, although it hasn't really all clicked for him just yet, but I think it's going to. If you're looking at those longer-term plays, Dowdle, Mitchell, Charbonnet, Hubbard, Tucker, maybe even Breeder are the guys I'd be looking to get pieces of. Wide receiver position, and in terms of, it's just amazing how they're scoring this season. It's just so many guys are putting up points. I mean, Adam Thielen to put up a 31-point week, considering how poor he's been, how poor Carolina offense has been the last few weeks. It was interesting to see some immediate names that sort of pop up from the weekend. You got to check out. I mean, DJ Chark had a really nice weekend, but again, I'm not sure how much I'm buying into this Carolina offense. It's different with Dalton there. So unless Dalton's playing more than a few weeks, if he's playing more than another week, then maybe I'll be interested in Thielen and Chark. But I think it's really much a short-term option. If we're looking under 50% owned, Rondale Moore had a nice week this week, 45.9% owned. We wouldn't go too crazy on him. I think, again, it's going to be very up and down. So I think for me, I'd be looking at putting in quite a short fab in on him, just a couple of percent. Zay Jones, he's 43.9% owned. He's someone I definitely want a bit of. He's not played last week due to injury, so he won't be on people's radar. So I think you can sneak in a really cheap fab bid for him, $1 or $2 on him. But he's a player I'd be looking to get some of. Romeo Doubs had a really good week. Might be worth a target, 27.1% owned. Again, I'd probably be spending sort of 3% of fab on him, maybe no more than that. The player I really would start thinking about putting some fab bids on is Tank Dell. He's 23.5% owned. He's a player I would want a lot more of. He had a huge week, and he's only going to get more and more work. So I'd be looking to get more work, more out of him. So I'd be looking at putting a 10% fab bid on Tank Dell for sure. Marvin Mims is someone I keep talking about, 8.6% owned. His ownership is going up slowly. He's a player I would put a very, very small fab bid on. He has put decent stat lines up the last couple of weeks, but he's not getting the volume, but hopefully the volume comes along. And then Rashee Rice, again, 8.3% owned. His ownership has actually gone down, but he's getting targeted when he's running routes. It's just not getting all the routes that we would kind of hope to see, but I think it's going to come along even more in the coming weeks. Another player to keep an eye on is Michael Wilson. He's getting increasingly more workload. 1.3% owned. Not a huge week, so I reckon you can sneak him under the radar for $1, maybe even for free. But he's a player to look at. Josh Palmer is probably one that's going to target quite a bit of fab dollars with the season-ending injury to Mike Williams. He was the biggest beneficiary when Williams went out. A lot of people think it's Quentin Johnston, and maybe that might happen as it goes later in the season. But Josh Palmer, I think, is the immediate recipient. So if you're looking for a wide receiver now who's going to give you immediate points, Josh Palmer is it. Again, probably worth 10% of your fab. He is rostered in 0.9% league, so he's going to be available just about everywhere. So you can get in on him now. I think that's going to cover. I think that's pretty much going to cover it. There's some weird targets here like Zacchaeus, who I'm sort of fading. I wouldn't get too involved in him. There's some names though I'd be targeting at the wide receiver position. When it comes to the tight end position, it's quite a wasteland out there, as we kind of know. The real tight ends that you kind of, I don't want to say go in on, but Donald Parham's going to gather interest because of his touchdowns. But and like the position is a touchdown dependent position, so maybe you do target Donald Parham, who's 0.4% owned. But I think he's going to have as many bust. He's going to have more bust weeks, and he's going to have good weeks. So if you want to chase touchdowns with him, and it's a good offense, I don't hate that. But I do think just be a little bit careful. So wouldn't put a lot of fab, 1-2% on it. Wouldn't put too much more on it. I don't think there's that many people going to go chasing at the tight end position. But if you can, probably the more steady streamer will be Luke Musgrave, 13.3% owned. A decent week this week. He's getting more targets in that offense. So I like him to continue to progress. So he's more of a long-term play. His ownership is actually going down. There's a really good matchup against the Lions this week. So I expect them to exploit that even further. So I like Luke Musgrave as a sort of longer term ad. So you can feel free to add him. We come to streaming options for DST this week. And, it's quite a difficult one with the ownerships because a lot of good matchups go to those teams that have good matchups this week. Buccaneers D is 21.1%. They get Jameis Winston. That looks like a really good matchup. It is in New Orleans. There is a bit of skepticism for me there, but given the fact that Jameis Winston loves to turn over the football, that looks like a matchup that you can really exploit. So I'd be quite happy to go with that. You could argue the same with the Panthers D. They're against Minnesota, who lead the league in fumbles. They've had a huge amount of fumbles, almost as many fumbles this season as they had the whole of last year. Seahawks D, they're 14% owned. They got the Giants, who haven't looked great. So that's one you could potentially target. I would normally say the Broncos D against Chicago, but the Broncos just don't look good at the moment. So I don't know if I want a piece of that, if I'm being truly honest. The Vikings D against Carolina, but against Andy Dalton, that might not be quite so good. So I think for me, I'd be looking to target the Buccaneers. The Buccaneers, for me, seems or the Bengals, DST, they've got Tennessee, who are struggling to move the ball, 18% owned. Those two for me, but I probably lean the Buccaneers this week, or actually the Seahawks, 11% owned. Those two seem to be the best matchups for me on paper, so you can definitely go after each of those. That's going to do it. Matchup show will be out by Thursday morning at the latest. And then we'll be back. Stocks and I will be back on Thursday with the flagship show, more fantasy focused, but I had a couple of good guests wanting to bring on and do the shows the last couple of weeks, and we'll delve a little bit into some trends and analysis. Don't forget to check out the Patreon. We'll be doing the Patreon cast, digging into all the trends analysis, all these players that are trending up. I've talked about Tank Dell on there. I've talked about a lot of players who are starting to see an upgrade in analysis. So do check that out. You can subscribe for just £1 a month, which is just nothing, but it gives you access to a Patreon cast, and it gives you access to the WhatsApp group as well. So make sure you check that out. There are other tiers as well if you want to get some merch as back in that. It basically pays for itself and then some. So do check that out. But appreciate all of you for liking. Please write a review. You can't appreciate how much they really help. We're coming up on 750 shows now. So appreciate everyone who's tuned in and being with us all this time. But yeah, if you could write us a review, could subscribe, could follow us on all the necessary channels to give us a promotion and plug, we really do appreciate it. I appreciate everything that you do for us in the community. So until then, Rush Nation, thank you so much as always, and I look forward to catching up with you later in the week. And don't forget, as always, keep rushing.